Welcome to this review of a new book on pre-order, Opening the Gates of Hell, Operation Barbarossa, June-July 1941 by Richard Hargreaves. It aims to take you through the rapid military victories, slash defeats, obviously. It also aims to take you into some of the early atrocities, both officially sanctioned by the Nazi regime in, everything that you'd expect from Nazis, but also the spontaneous ones that just bubbled up. It focuses on just the opening fortnight. Actually, I think it's genius. And it wants to take you into this sense of unparalleled bloodletting. Now, Hargreaves is a journalist by trade, not an academic, so he's not aiming to prove some sort of polemic point. Instead, he wants to take you on a journey, and he's pretty well qualified. He's written a couple of other books, and he's a former war correspondent himself, so he does know this ground pretty well, and he kind of transports himself back into the summer of 1941. It's about the length and breadth of Barbarossa, from the Baltic to the Black Sea kind of thing, and from the front line to the rear line on both sides. It really takes that moment between the Germans invading and Stalin responding, because for the first 13 days, Stalin didn't say anything. He went silent. He went paralyzed. And what happened in that profoundly shocking fortnight is pretty much the motif of everything that happened over the thousands and thousands of miles of front line north and south, and indeed, all the way from the Caucasus to Berlin, over years and years and years. Well, you can't possibly cover all of the enormity of the East Front, or the West Front if you're, Soviet. But you can just capture that couple of weeks. So he aims to give us like a strategic picture, absolutely. We zoom up into the German and Soviet high command, but also bring us back down. What was it like to try and take the fortress of Brest-Litovsk? What was it like to surge through Lithuania or to do some hard fighting in the Ukraine? He takes us around the plans and the schemes and the various plotting that occurred, and he's very particular to give us both an Axis and a Soviet point of view. He's clearly a man who speaks multiple languages, and he uses that greatly to his advantage. So it's both a military account, primarily a military account, I guess, but also the civilians aren't just bystanders. They're not just, not mentioned at all. What happened to them is absolutely part of the picture. I think he takes this quote from Robert E. Lee to heart. So he's taking us into the very gates of hell, as his title implies. I think that's a great thing. For many of us military history buffs, this is ground that we've crisscrossed many times before. And, these grainy old black and white pictures literally lack colour. So these poor, hapless, unarmed, innocent women outside the 9th Fort in Kaunas, I think Hargreaves works hard to bring back the colour and the humanity into these kinds of terrible events. He's done his research, he knows his onions, 22 pages of bibliography. I always think it's important to check out the bibliography because I want to know how he knows what he's telling me. And you can see here there are lots of pretty contemporary scholarship, lots of accounts of classic military accounts. So, here's good old John Erickson from the mid-80s to inevitably, of course, David Glantz doing his stuff, but accounts of civilian atrocities all the way through. I think it's a really impressive marshalling of personal papers and diaries, and he's, combed through the archives and unit histories. He's gone to the contemporary newspapers of the time. I salute the depth and breadth and the multi-languageness of the work he's put into doing this. I like to think about not so much strengths and weaknesses, but what he's focused on and what he hasn't focused on, because you can't do everything in a book. So yeah, he's focused on 13 days, just 13 days, and it's still quite long. That's a lot of focus. but it's all the better for that. The broad scope of the front line, but also what was happening behind the front line. This does give you what's known in literature as point of view zooming. So one moment you're with Marshal Zhukov back in Moscow. The next you're with the general officer commanding the German 11th Army in Romania. And then you're with this poor corporal who on day one earns an Iron Cross for his bravery in crossing the River Bug. And on day two, didn't go so well for him, as it didn't go so well for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So he puts you in the action as it unfolds. This does give you, or gave me, a kind of like a river, like a flow of events steaming through as they unfolded, which could be a bit ungrounded if you didn't have a bigger picture of what's going on, but almost like sort of, the divide between a novel and a history. Not that he's made any of this stuff up. I particularly enjoyed the stories of people that I'd never really thought of before. So it's not a kind of arrows on map kind of book. I mean, heaven knows I love a few arrows on maps, and I have plenty of them, but I don't have books with this kind of storytelling going on. It also gave, I think, a really clear idea of why these men would fight. Why, for the fatherland or for Mother Russia, what was going on psychologically that, made picking up your rifle into a good idea. And because of that, the soldiers became real men in their letters and their diaries. It's very much focused on an uninterrupted storytelling. For me, I found the chapters really long, but I mean, that's just me. Perhaps you are fine with that. Favourite bits? Well, the sense of German overconfidence comes through so strongly, and how that hits the fan of Soviet resistance so quickly within the first fortnight. On the Soviet side, the sense of shock and confusion, the startle reaction. Stalin's silence is a kind of a reflection of that startle, not knowing what to do. The joy of people liberated. You have to remember Lithuanians, Poles and Belarusians, Ukrainians, Romanians, they'd all very, very recently come under Soviet occupation, and here they were being liberated. Obviously, the goodwill that came with that was squandered super quickly by the Germans being, the master race. And you get real close to the tragic events happening to real people. As I say, it's not just arrows on maps. For me, what I wanted was, I always want, is a blend of viewpoints, not just the Germans. Not that it's the Germans' fault that Russian historiography is so poor. And Hargreaves definitely delivered on that. I wanted new research, and again, big tick, and new ways of seeing a campaign that's very familiar to me. So yes, and an unexpected bonus, I think it was how dramatic, but also how straightforward the storytelling was. So for me, this is a big yes. If you are a World War II, particularly if you're an Eastern Front kind of a person, if you like your military history to come with colour and stories and humanity, then this is a great addition to your library. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.